As your timekeeper today, we'll be back at Corbine. The discussion meet has been a Farm Bureau contest for many years, and the Wisconsin FFA has adapted this contest for the FFA as well. A good discussion meet contestant stands out as a committee chair. A good committee chair cooperatively leads the discussion, makes sure that everyone is involved in the discussion, and attempts to bring the group to a consensus on an action plan and actionable items which will solve the topic question that they're challenged with. And so now we'll prepare for the discussion. The topic for today and for this round is, should a one-credit agriculture course be added to the Wisconsin graduation requirements? The contestants for this meet are Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation President Jim Holt, Wisconsin Ag in the Classroom Coordinator and Foundation Executive Director Wendy Kennel, Wisconsin Farm Bureau District 3 Coordinator Gretchen Camps, and Wisconsin FFA State President Allison Wading. Woo! Somebody's got a brooding section. So. But before we begin, we will review the procedure for this session. We will begin the discussion with a 30-minute, almost had you, 30-second opening statement from each of the contestants in voluntary order. The timekeeper, Matt, will raise a red card at 30 seconds. After each contestant has given his or her opening remarks, I will announce that we will have open discussion for 20 minutes. The timekeeper will indicate when 15 minutes have elapsed by raising a yellow card to indicate that there are 5 minutes of discussion remaining. The timekeeper will raise the red card to indicate that a total of 20 minutes has elapsed. Contestants will then have 1 minute of quiet time to prepare their 1-minute closing statement. The timekeeper will raise a red card at 1 minute for the closing statements, and they will be given in voluntary order. But before we begin, each of you in your folder have 2 handouts relating to the discussion meet. One is the rubric, which looks like this. And judges use this rubric to judge you, the discussion meet participants. I want you to look at this rubric as you watch these 4 amazingly talented people compete in the discussion meet. Feel free to award them as many or as few points as you so choose. The other handout describes the meet that we are having here today. More importantly, I want you to focus on the back of the handout, and where it lists the 4 different types of personalities. During the first portion of our discussion meet, I want you to figure out if any of our contestants portray any of these, and if so, why. You'll want to take some notes, as I will be going around the room and putting a few of you on the spot about some things that you have observed. Now, let's begin. Contestants, you may now, actually they have 30 seconds, a minute, to do their opening statement. So start now to prepare your opening statement. All right, now you may begin your opening statement.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here today. Our question today poses the question to us of whether or not we should add a mandatory credit for high school seniors to graduate from high school. And I think, just to begin with, I would say I think public education is a cornerstone of education here in Wisconsin, but I'm a little bit lost about why we would want to add more credits. as a past school board member, I have a little bit of experience in things that happen in high schools, and I'm just a little lost. Maybe we should add about 10 or 15 more credits just to make it interesting. That'd be a good idea. Anybody?
As a farmer, having others in agriculture that know what I'm doing and that understand my industry is really important to me. So I think that having a new high school graduation requirement is really important. I'd like to share a story with you today to kind of help illustrate this. When I first got married to a farmer, I'm married to a farmer. When I first got married to this farmer, we went out to the farm and we had to catch a sick calf in the pasture. So he assured me as we were driving up to the cow, she's very nice, don't worry about it. I was like, okay. So we started out driving along, I jump on the four-wheeler, we pull up to the cow, and the calf starts to run. So my husband tackles it, and what do you think the calf does? He bellers. Yep. So, and then the calf jumps through the fence. And so my husband jumps over the fence.
And thank you, Gretchen. Thank you for that great introduction.
So I'm just really excited to be here today, and we're gonna have a great conversation.
Thomas Jefferson said it best 228 years ago when he made a quote to George Washington saying that agriculture is our wisest pursuit because it will in the end contribute to the most wealth, good morals, and happiness. As we tackle the topic of adding agriculture as a Wisconsin graduation requirement, I look forward to discussing the success of current agriculture education departments, the need for an educated and skilled workforce, and a plan of action about how we can make that a reality in Wisconsin.
You have heard the opening statements. The contestants may now proceed with the discussion. Contestants, please direct your discussion to your fellow panel members.
Well, I'm just really looking forward to this discussion today because I want to make sure that everyone agrees with me. Jim,
But Gretchen,
you're
I
right.
think we need to start off with some key points that we're going to discuss today, okay? So I really want to take a look at the success of current agriculture education departments. I mean, it's the perfect time because we're in February, it's CTE month, so career and technical education. And if we look at the graduation rates of students who are enrolled in agricultural education programs, the graduation rate is at 98.3%. compared to 88.2% of students who do not participate in those programs. Jim, what do you think about those?
What happens to those other 1.7 people? I haven't seen a 0.7 people in my school for quite a while. I think you're avoiding the topic.
We could talk about art education. I feel like that could be a relevant.
Allison, really? Art education? Let's talk about ag.
Okay, wait a minute. I think we need to get this discussion under control a little bit better. I think what we're trying to talk about is should a one-credit
Gretchen?
agriculture...
Gretchen, let's go back to that statistic of students in agricultural education programs, the graduation rate being 98.3%.
And you know, maybe if you had a clue, you would know how many people...
I think we're all a little bit lost here. I know that in my high school, there's a
Jim, I think you're always lost.
There's 28 credits are needed to graduate, and let's add one more in ag, let's add one in art, and how about let's add one in horticulture.
But how many jobs are available in art?
Are we concerned about jobs?
We are.
We're talking about graduation credits.
Wait, everyone, wait.
Wait,
I
are we
think
talking about college or high school?
we're talking about high school, Allison. Try to keep up. I just really think that everyone should understand my point because I do think it's the right answer. And I think that what we really need to think about is that having an extra course in Wisconsin graduation requirements wouldn't be a terrible thing because there are so many people that are involved in agriculture. And Jim, I understand that you think you are on the school board and that you know a lot about school, but I just don't really think that that's probably true. So I think that it's important to look to people like Wendy and I, who are teachers, who can back up the fact that education is really important. And obviously Allison's point about art, though it wasn't a very good one.
And Jim, I'm going to have to agree with Gretchen. You know, usually I don't do that, but today I'm going to agree with Gretchen in that we really do have to look at the phenomenal students coming out of our ag education programs and all of the awesome opportunities that are available
Do
for
any of
them.
you realize that only 2% of the people in this country are involved in agriculture? The other 98% only eat.
Right? Well, Jim, I mean, 30% of those other people, though, they are involved in agriculture. So I think if we have a class and we add it to the high school graduation requirements, I mean, if we think of the people in our audience, how many of them would be here if it weren't for ag education? So how many great
Reggie, you should
leaders?
take a breath. You're going around my ear here.
But food isn't agriculture.
Moving on. Thanks, Allison, for your comments. We really appreciate them. But let's look at the number of people who we do need to work in the industry and how many people we are going to need to educate to fill those positions. I mean, the USDA said that annually there's about 54,000 jobs available in agriculture and only 29,000 people to fill them. So what are we going to do about that?
Right after I take the pen away from Gretchen? I think we have a lot of jobs in agriculture. We're lucky in this industry, but sometimes we get a little bit overdosed on how much we have to teach people. We have great schools that do a
Jim, how many
great
days
job.
have you spent as a teacher? Just out of curiosity.
I taught Sunday school for 5 years.
Only two.
It kind of counts, but I think we really need to go back to the question. And I think that, I think you should really try to start to agree with me that there's a lot of value in having an agriculture course as a Wisconsin graduation requirement. Again, I say to you, all these people in this room wouldn't be here if it wasn't for agriculture programs. And some of them, I'm sure all of them actually, are here because they choose to be, but they know the importance of eating food, because 100% of the people eat. And so I just really think we should consider the merits of it. And I don't
Take
know.
a breath, Gretchen, please.
Again, Jim, with the breathing.
See, now, most high school students have a very full load to achieve their credits, as it is.
I think I'm going to
And so
piggyback
if
on
you're gonna
Gretchen
add
and
one
think
person-
about how many high school students do you know?
I lived with a couple of them for about 4 years each.
Jim, that was like 36 years ago.
You're all a little old, let's be honest.
Well, I
They're
just
only
think,
as old as you feel.
I just think, again, we have to keep going back to the point that we need to talk about this question, and that a one-credit agriculture course, Jim, that's over 4 years. If they need 28 credits to graduate, don't you think we could squeeze one in? Maybe we could have a little bit less of a different thing, like,
Or maybe we could think about getting rid of a different requirement and replacing it with agriculture.
right, Jim,
How do
what
you
are
feel
the
about
other
that?
requirements
So,
in
what
high
do you
school
want to go about
graduation?
math or science? That would be good to get rid of, right?
Well,
wait,
agriculture is science.
what else you got? What else do they have
English?
to know?
I hated English.
Okay, what else you got?
I was never good at reading anyway. Certainly not good at listening.
Other, obviously.
But my point is, we have some good requirements now. If we're going to add one for ag, let's add one for mining. Let's add one.
Let's talk about mining.
Mining?
Mining.
Yeah, mining.
So, I mean, at some point, there's
Wisconsin is really big.
84 credits required, and how are these students going to be in high school for 6 years?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Again, I just want to keep saying that we need to go back
We
to
heard
the
you
fact.
before, Gretchen.
You know, Jim, I think that it's important to look at, students need to have a chance. And I think that without giving them some opportunities to explore other careers, it's just really not going to be worth it. So, okay, we have 28 credits in the high school they have to graduate, which apparently has gone up, because I feel like I only needed 24 when I went to high school. So maybe they're just smart to graduate now. But okay, so we talked about English, we talked about math. What else do they have to graduate in your school district?
Oh, social sciences?
What's
Okay.
a social science?
Oh, like history, isn't that history? Geography, good stuff, yeah.
Okay. Do you think that we could just extend the school day and add like one
You know,
class?
I bet the teachers would love that.
I think we should, maybe.
I would beg to differ. As a former teacher, I'm just not into adding extra minutes to the school day.
Okay.
Well, let's add extra days then.
So Jim, what other electives are there in schools from a school board member perspective that we could
Oh, there's
maybe
some
change up?
great art classes, there's some great ag classes that are electives. There's some great things in business classes, economics, those are great ads.
Okay, well, I mean, I was a high school agriculture teacher, so I think that we need to have everyone take an agriculture course because it would probably help.
It would save your job.
When you were a high school agriculture teacher, did you teach your students about the weather?
I didn't actually. Did you learn about the weather in your high school agriculture class?
It depended on the day. Weather is usually a great topic to talk about. I was thinking we could move our discussion to that.
Okay, well, the weather outside today is very
Grateful.
chilly.
I think I'm lost.
Yep.
Okay, let's recap this discussion and where we are so far. So far, the weather outside is frightful. Jim, we want to extend the hours of the school day and
You want to extend it.
no,
Actually, I think you said
that
point.
was you.
That was your point.
I was making the point of
Jim,
negative.
Jim, it was you.
I agree with Wendy. I think it was you. But I also think that we should look into maybe taking one other elective away and making a mandatory ag class. So like, could we look at some other programs? How would it affect the art department if we took?
There are no
one?
requirements on art. Those are electives. You
Could
don't
we-
know your school
But-
classes very well.
You're right.
But
I like
Mark
yours.
it down, Wendy's at a loss for words.
Wendy, I think you had some really good points in your opening. Could we go back to your first point of topics that you wanted to talk about today?
sure, my first point was discussing the current success of agricultural education departments in Wisconsin and really looking at the graduation rates and why students are successful. I don't think it's just the classroom, but it's
Yeah, okay,
also
yep, enough, thanks, good. That's a really good point. I think.
Gretchen, but I
we
have
should-
more to add.
But Wendy, it's not your turn to talk. Allison, what do you think?
Still enjoying the weather, Alice?
Yeah, I'm just really thinking about that weather outside, sorry.
Okay. Jim, do you have any opinions that are relevant, or should I just skip you and go back to Wendy?
All right, thanks for that introduction, Gretchen. But I think too, I really do want to look at that and think about all of the opportunities and compare how the current requirements would compare to what we could do when we add an agriculture course. So thinking about all of the FFA members that are here and the opportunities that they're given for hands-on experiences and other things, I really think it would benefit our industry.
Maybe we should take a vote right here and see if they want to add to the graduation.
Jim, what do they know? They're
program.
high school kids.
All right, so we're gonna take a little bit of a timeout and discuss what we have kind of witnessed here. This has been a unique and challenging discussion meet, I would say, and isn't necessarily some of the qualities and skills and traits that we would like to see from a discussion meet, both from a Farm Bureau's perspective, but also from an FFA's perspective. So what I'm going to do right now is hopefully each of you have taken some notes or at least been observant. And I'm going to ask you some questions about what maybe you have seen that wasn't quite exactly what you should do in the discussion meet. And so it could be something you observed, something you heard them say, maybe an attitude or habit that they had, and hopefully, knock on wood, we can give them some pointers on what would be more appropriate for a discussion meet and how we can turn this around and maybe end on a high note. Any volunteers? Yes.
Allison really wasn't into the conversation at all.
Really? I thought you did well.
She did.
Yes, Allison was kind of out in left or right field, I'm not sure which one. And so she wasn't even discussing the topic at hand. Yes, what is something else?
Gretchen and Wendy were very overpowering and kept repeating their topics and points even though they weren't really relevant, and Miss Wendy did not stay on topic whatsoever. Like, they kept varying from the topic, like, anywhere.
Funny, she does that at work too. Ooh, yeah. Hey, Maya. Oh, yes.
So I think the comment, what do they know, they're high schoolers, is a little offensive because we're basically the next generation of what's gonna take, like, advanced agriculture, and we're gonna be adults when you guys are old people. Love we're doing. And know where agriculture is gonna go.
Anybody else have? Oh, yes, up front. Eli steps in today.
Nobody really waited for the other person to finish talking, except for Allison. Allison did a good job.
Yes, and so another one.
Jim liked to be a lot of negative and bring up the bad points, like 3 days long.
Very true, very true. So each of these four had a personality that they were trying to exemplify. And even in the opening statements, there were things that they were trying to demonstrate to you. So, who in here thinks they know who the negative Nelly was? There was kind of a hint. On the count of 3, just yell out the name. 1, 2, 3. Jim. Yes. He did such a good job at it. He did. So Jim was supposed to be the negative Nelly, finding the flaw in every sort of idea or point. And that's actually the opposite of what we want to do in a discussion meet. Our goal isn't necessarily to always agree, but to maybe come to a conclusion where we can move forward. And so, this one may be a little bit tougher. Who was the one that was supposed to be overpowering?
Wendy.
I'll say it on the count of, on the count of 3. Let's have everybody out. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Again, it's a natural trait for some people. Hey, when you're throwing the softball, man. So she was supposed to be overpowering, dominant, and we have to watch for that when we are doing a discussion meet, because it's not always what we think, but a good leader, a good committee chairman, what we look for somebody that will win the discussion meet is somebody who actually takes point A, point B, and brings them together for a common solution. Or as we talked about earlier, an action plan. Who was the irrelevant point maker? Allison. Allison. How's the weather, Allison? Very good. And that's another thing when focusing on the discussion meet, trying to remind yourself what you're actually there to talk about. As a judge, and I can attest to a lot of these people up here who have done it, it is so easy to get off topic. And one of the things that you should do constantly in the discussion meet is remind yourself, what are you actually there to discuss? What are possibly some of the subpoints of what you're there to discuss? And so always keep that in mind, because it will help you out. Now lastly, your process of elimination. Wendy was the interrupter, and she did a fine job at that as well. It is important in the discussion meet to talk, but it's also important to be cooperative. And if you looked on your rubrics, cooperative is actually a pretty big part of the points allocated. And so being a team player, having a cooperative attitude, working together, that makes a difference. And as a judge, we take that into account quite a bit when judging you. And so what are some things that maybe they can do differently in the second half of the discussion? Anybody got an idea?
They can work together to come up with a solution to this topic at discussion.
And what could they maybe do better amongst themselves to work as a team?
Each one of them had their negative point, their bad parts to them, so they could be less that and more cooperative. Like Jim could be less negative and more positive, and Gretchen not always overpowering. And then Allison needs to bring in topics that actually make sense to the discussion.
Very good. And so we are going to actually unpause here in just a second, and they will finish the last 10 minutes of the discussion meet and their conclusions. Now this time you should notice a very contrasting discussion meet.
I mean, you talked in your opening about looking at the success of agriculture programs throughout the state. And I guess one example that I think kind of fits, especially with today, is the Wisconsin FFA Farm Forum. And I think we heard earlier today there's 162 or 167 students here from all over the state. And I think that just really shows that a lot of kids want to have leadership opportunities, and many of them, again, wouldn't be here without ag. So I think maybe one thing we could talk a little bit about, if you're willing to join with me, folks, to talk a little bit about what about the kids who aren't in agriculture programs? How are they missing out on these opportunities, and what can we do to help them, engage? Jim, you're from the school board perspective.
Right, Gretchen, I agree with you. We are concerned as people of agriculture what the rest of the world thinks about agriculture and thinks about their food. And while I might not totally agree that we need to make it a credit, I think that the very discussion of this point makes us more aware about how we as individuals and maybe other people in our school systems can help educate people who don't have that ag background. I look forward to other discussions as far as your ideas of how, if we were to make it a credit, how it would fit into the system.
I think if you bring up an interesting point that people are concerned about where their food comes from. Everyone eats, so it's everyone's problem. And the opportunities that are available through agricultural education are tremendous. And it's not just the classroom, it's outside of the classroom, and really looking at the three parts. So FFA, the classroom, and then also supervised agricultural experience program. So I really don't know of another program that offers all of those opportunities for students to participate. And it really prepares them for the career that they are interested in. And with so many jobs open in the agriculture industry, I think that's something that we as agriculturalists really need to worry about, because if we do not have students engaged and interested in the industry, what are we going to do for the industry in the future? Allison, what do you think about that?
I definitely agree with your point on the three-circle model of agricultural education. As we know, that is truly the standing point of our organization because it allows students to gain hands-on experience in the classroom and through those projects. And I think I would like to hear from Gretchen a little bit. You have experience through working with college students, how maybe that experience in high school has helped them move forward.
Right, definitely. I work with the Collegiate Farm Bureau at UW-Platteville, and I also taught at Platteville for a short time. And I know that a lot of those kids, similar to yourself, had non-farm backgrounds. And so they weren't exposed to agriculture until they got into high school, and they had an ag and an FFA program to help them learn a little bit more about what was out there and how they could fit that into their life. And I think that for some of them was a real turning point. I had the luxury of growing up on a farm. So even though we did chores at 5 o'clock every day and we worked a lot of weekends and nights and summers, I understood, agriculture and where my food came from. And so I think that kind of offers it. And I know, Jim, that you're really concerned about how it's going to fit into the coursework. So do you see from the district budgetary perspective, is this even really feasible to add it as a requirement, or should we maybe be looking into doing something offering it as a summer type course that we could maybe bring people in for a week and kind of just do a crash course? Would that be more feasible?
I think you're on the right track, Gretchen. I think there's a lot of value to having all of our students understand agriculture, and I don't want to take away from that direction. But the realistic situation in schools with the number of required credits is a challenge today. And if we are to expect as an industry to add agriculture as a requirement, I think there's other industries that will make the same point. So I'm looking for a solution that achieves the goal of awareness without actually making a requirement. And I'd be interested in Wendy or Allison's thoughts on that.
I really think that we need at this point to look at how can we team up with others in the ag industry. So we look at, for example, the Wisconsin Ag Education and Workforce Development Council. Their mission is growing Wisconsin's ability to compete for creating a stronger and sustainable workforce. So if we have those people who are advocating, we really need to team up with them and figure out how we can make this a reality in Wisconsin. Is it going to be a tough job? Yes, it definitely is, and each industry is going to want to have one of those credits. So we really have to make our voices heard and show and give real life examples of why it's so important.
I'd like to make one more point about improvement that's happened in the last number of years, and that's where many schools now have ag credits that qualify as science credits. It took a number of years for that to happen in a number of schools, and it wasn't mandated by DPI, but I think the rational process that schools went forward to get to there has been an improvement in our system of educating kids in ag. Allison, maybe you experienced some of that.
Definitely. As I travel around the state, you can see those courses that are impacting students because they're getting those college credits through the Ag Science equivalency. There are about 200 schools that, 100 schools that have that right now, and there are 400 schools in high schools in Wisconsin. And I believe that we have the ability to encourage more to have that because they already have their science classes and agriculture is impacting us every day, so we can encourage them to take that science class and add an aspect of agriculture. So I think you work for the Egg in the Classroom for the Farm Bureau, and if a program or school doesn't have that doesn't have an ag education teacher, something like Egg in the Classroom would be a requirement and possibly bridging that gap that we've been talking about so far.
I think our discussion is obviously cut a little bit short today, and I'd really like to hear as we wrap up today, what can we do as Farm Bureau members or FFA members to take a look at this topic starting today? Jim, can we start with you?
Well, I think our students here have a unique opportunity to interact with not only their ag teachers, but maybe other teachers in their system and maybe their principal, and talk about why they feel ag is important and why it might be a more integral part of the curriculum for all students. That might be one approach we can take.
Right, and I agree. I think that it's important to, I know we're not going to find a solution, and there's a lot of budget things, and then there, you don't want to create a requirement and then create a shortage. So if there's 100, how many ag programs did you say there were, Allison?
There are 250.
250, and there's 400 high schools in the state. So obviously then we'd have to come up with another 150 teachers. And if I remember correctly, I still think there's some vacancies in ag education, at this point in time that we're trying to fill. So I think that, Jim has a good point that it's maybe great that people know where all this food comes from, but there's a lot of other obstacles. So I guess from my perspective, I think the first thing we have to do is maybe talk to some of those other folks, maybe talk to some students and some teachers and some principals and some other school board members and some state FFA officers and things like that, and those resources we have to see where we can maybe take this.
I agree. I think that agricultural literacy is one of the biggest problems we face each day in ag. And I think that as state officers this year and as all of FFA members, we have the opportunity to encourage people to know where their food comes from, but then also we have the responsibility to share the good things that we're doing in our classrooms with those partners that you have all talked about today.
Great, and I think for me as a Farm Bureau member and Egg in the Classroom coordinator, it's really about starting the conversation and really explaining to people what is agriculture all about, because there are a lot of misconceptions obviously in the agriculture industry, and I think that's something that we really need to start doing a lot more of. So that's one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to start advocating and talking to the people that at DPI, some of our partners, to see if we can make this a reality.
I had the opportunity earlier today to listen to Ben Peterson, one of the Peterson brothers that does the videos. And one point that I really took away from his comment, and I think it maybe fits here, is that we need to talk about agriculture in a positive sense. There's too many people out there that like to bash us, but let us remember that we are the face of agriculture, and to go forward in a positive and open way will carry our mantra in a great stead for a long time.
Right, I agree. And I think that, as we look at, what we can do kind of moving forward, we kind of want to wrap it up. We talked about the three parts of ag education, the FFA, the classroom, and the SAE project. And so even some of the advocating that I think should be done is just talking about what those three parts really mean. Do people that are not FFA members, I know that I saw a tweet on Facebook today, or a post on Facebook today that said, I wasn't involved in FFA, but holy blue jackets. And it was a member of our staff that was here and that hadn't been involved in FFA. So if you've worn the blue jacket, you understand the importance of it and the relevance of it and why it means so much to so many. But if you've never been around it, then it's really hard. So trying to kind of communicate that, maybe it's through the television reports or newspaper or print articles and getting more on social media and getting more people to see that. I think there's a lot that can be said for it. And so maybe we don't need to make it a high school requirement, but maybe just make it an awareness thing so that students and parents can know that there's those opportunities out there. I guess, Allison, you wear the blue jacket. Any thoughts on that?
I definitely agree with everything you're saying. I think that the three circle models are really what are tying our organization together, but we need to start maybe focusing less on explaining that to everyone and explaining to the public that FFA is preparing students to be college and career ready. Because if we can focus on that and show how the three circle model does that, that's when we're going to see that success and support of industry and people knowing where their food comes from.
Definitely. And Wendy, I'm sorry, Wendy, go ahead.
Time has been called. Please prepare for your closing statements, and I ask the audience to remain silent for 1 minute to aid the contestants in their preparation. One minute. Please put down your pens, and in voluntary order, please stand and give your 1 minute closing.
Well, I enjoyed the opportunity to visit about this subject today. I think it was a great subject, a very thought-provoking subject. I think I'd like to come back to the point that public education, K-12 education, is the cornerstone of our education system in Wisconsin. And so agriculture as a part of that is key to our industry and to the success of people throughout the world, really, in the sense of having food to eat. It's a very thought-provoking question, and yet I believe that actually including it as a requirement is probably the wrong track. I think we've had some good discussion here today that laid out some alternatives to how we can make it important and raise its awareness without going the extra step of making it a requirement. So thank you again for the discussion.
I believe in the future of agriculture, with a faith born not of words, but of deeds. Achievements won by present and past generations of agriculturalists in the promise of better days through better ways, even as the better things we now enjoy have come to us through the struggle of former years. It will be a struggle to figure out if agriculture should be added to the Wisconsin graduation requirements. However, getting the conversation started and getting a solution found, just as generations before us struggled to find solutions to tough problems, we'll work together to find solutions to this one, and in the end, will benefit everyone involved in agriculture. Thank you for a great discussion today.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "An investment of knowledge pays the best interest." Agricultural education is an investment in knowledge. With a 99-to-1 gap of non-farm to farm citizens, we need to invest in this knowledge, whether it be just by advocating for our industry and increasing the number of people who know where their food comes from. As FFA members and industry members alike, we can all work together to do that and incorporate that into our programs. Thank you for the great discussion today.
Thomas Jefferson had it right that we all want real wealth, good morals, and happiness. As we tackle the topic of whether or not Wisconsin agriculture should be considered for a graduation requirement, I think we really do need to start talking about all of the great things that are happening in our agricultural education departments, the graduation rates and how successful our students are, and how we can make this a reality in Wisconsin. Working with FFA members, industry partners, and those interested in the agriculture industry, we would be able to make this a reality.
All right, well, this concludes the discussion meeting. Let's give all of our panelists a round of applause.